In my last Delphi video, I mentioned the probable cause affidavit, the search warrant for Ron Logan's house. What brought the ISP and the FBI there? Did they find something at the Klein residence that brought them there? Talked about how I'd love to see it, and lo and behold, last night it got leaked. Anya and Kevin at the murder sheet have it, they put it out. I could be wrong, but I believe they got it from HLN and the Down the Hill crew. Ron Logan himself gave it to them, which is important. I'm open to correction on that, as I haven't heard it from the horse's mouth, but I believe that's the case. And it's also very interesting to me that they are working together or communicating in some way, because I talked in the past about Barbara and does she know something or have a lead on a possible Ron Logan Tony Klein connection. That would be huge if there was a connection of sorts there, if that could be confirmed. I hope that's next. I got my wish in the last video, so fingers crossed that's next. But we have a lot of stuff here to go through. Some crazy new details. It confirms some stuff and it debunks a lot of other stuff as well, which is good. Before I do go on, just to note, there will be stuff picked out of this and people will run with it and make you convinced that Ron is responsible. A lot of these things can be explained. I don't think he killed the girls. I'm open-minded about it. But even after this document, it doesn't change my mind. You have to remember, with search warrant affidavits and the same with arrest warrants, the state is putting its best foot forward. They're exaggerating maybe a small bit. They are trying to convince a court or a judge or a DA to give them what they want. And in this case, it was to tear Ron Logan's home and outbuildings apart and take anything related to the crime scene in any way. And if two teenage girls were found dead on my property, I would basically be expecting a search. And I think Ron was also, which I'll talk about. There's a lot of details here. We learned a lot. Names and stuff are redacted. Anya and Kevin are communicating with Ellie about this. More great work by them. If you read people on Reddit or YouTube giving out about Anya and Kevin, just know it's because they're annoyed because the stuff coming out goes against their own personal theories. And I think some, and I know Reddit is annoyed at me because I say this, I think some people on Reddit are very, very jealous of Anya and Kevin. The fact that they came into this case late and have exposed so much and done so much good work. They're just a bit jealous. There's a lot of crazy people in the Delphi case. Just ignore them. They're probably the same people who think Kelsey and the family are responsible. But Ron Logan was a suspect 100%. This affidavit was filed 3 days after a tweet was sent out that people reference. It was a tweet sent out on March the 14th which seemed to clear Ron. It's a very misleading tweet, no doubt. Maybe that was the intention. Either way, we know now Ron was a suspect when they said this. The FBI were the ones who were all over this. It was an FBI agent who wrote the affidavit. I speculated in the last video on Delphi how well the ISP and the FBI were working together. And it seems, going off this, it was the FBI were the ones who turned away from Klein and focused in on Ron back at the start. Most of us probably thought it was the ISP, but to be fair, it looks like the ISP were the ones who got this back on track, who shaked it up and got us where we are today. This is the main things that I took away from this document. I'll link the doc below as well in the description, the PDF, if anyone wants to go and have a read anyway. The purpose of this document isn't in any way to give details out on the crime scene, but there is some in there. A good bit actually. The girls were killed by a weapon and it looks like the word sharp possibly is redacted. A large amount of blood was lost by the girls. No surprises there. We talked in past videos about how they called off the dogs and what a big mistake this was, because did BG actually go back across the creek when leaving the crime scene? His clothes or the people who did this would have been soaked with blood. And I think there's a good chance they went back into the water. We learned that articles of clothing was taken from one of the girls. The specifics of what it was is redacted, but I think it is undergarments or underwear of one of the girls. They tell us straight out the bodies were staged. The bodies were moved after the girls were killed. We don't know how far. I don't think too far. But it doesn't tell us, it just tells us the bodies were staged. They were moved into position. They believe the reason for this was to take a photo or a video, something to remember the crime scene by. There is no signs of a struggle or a fight on any of the girls, which is interesting because we thought for a while that one of the girls did have signs of a struggle and a fight. No visible signs of a struggle or a fight. They found fibres and unidentified hair at the crime scene. And I'll talk about that unidentified hair again at the end. But we've lots of new details on the crime scene. But this document is an attempt to tie Ron Logan to that. They searched his home on March the 6th for a probation violation and they seen a lot of knives, a lot of guns. But that search was very limited. So this document is to get another search warrant to go back and rip the place apart and take everything that they could possibly need. The reasoning behind it is they thought Ron Logan was the same build as BG. They thought he was in very good condition. They thought his voice was very similar. Ron got caught giving a false alibi. An alibi that he set up before the girls' bodies were even found. Ron should not have been driving and he called his cousin and asked him to say that he drove him to an aquarium in Lafayette. This sounds damning, but you have to remember, he knows he's going to be questioned. He knows something is wrong. He knows he's not allowed to drive. But he also set this up for 3 p.m. And we know the girls died around 2:13, I think. So if he was involved, he probably should have set her up for 2 o'clock rather than 3. But a huge red flag to the FBI. He did go, they did find a receipt for the aquarium, but he drove himself and he shouldn't have been driving. He also seems to be lying about the amount of time that he was there. It's only 30 minutes away and I think Ron extends this a lot. So he's either lying about the time he left at or else he went somewhere else. He also gave a very unusual answer when he was talking to a police officer about whether they were going to search his home. Logan told the police officer that he didn't think evidence was going to lead them there, but then said, quote, "I don't know," which is kind of unusual because you should know, Ron. When his cousin, the one who gave him the alibi, seen the photo of BG, he cracked straight away and told LE because he thought BG was Ron. He admitted that he gave him a false alibi, that Ron called him to set it up and he'd never done this before. They talked about Ron's past relationships. We hear from 2 women. Woman number 1 knew Ron for 7 or 8 years. She used to stay over at the weekends. She said she left him after he beat her and dragged her out of the car by the hair. She felt stalked and harassed after they broke up. She had not talked to him for about 2 years and she said Ron used to tell her when they were together that he could kill her and nobody would find her body. She said she knew Ron carried a gun everywhere he went. She said he used to carry it in a fanny pack, a one made out of a nice material. She also, like his cousin, said as soon as she saw the photographs, she thought it was Ron. She didn't even know it was the suspect. When she seen the photo, she thought they were just looking for Ron Logan. It wasn't until after she was like, "That's Ron," they're like, "No, that's the suspect." The next part is very weak. They just talk about his phone in the area, but he also lives there. They mentioned 2 text messages, one that he sent on around 7:55, 7:56 I think. And they said that he was in the proximity of where the bodies were found, but the bodies are between the bridge and his house, so he's going to be there. They are reaching a bit here, and you can see that with the word likely. They keep saying his phone was likely, and likely isn't going to stand up in court. He received a text at 10:15 that night as well, and again they're saying he was likely outside his home. He met officers a few days later down by the crime scene and they said he had no trouble going back up home and going back up and down that hill. And I think here they're just hinting at his age basically. We heard from another woman number 2. Her first thought when she heard that the girls were found on Ron's property was that Ron did it. She said Ron was sober one night, she was drunk and he gave her a dig, smacked her in the face. She said he felt disrespected, and again here I think they're hinting at, did possibly BG feel disrespected by the girls and did he snap? Ron Logan as well seems like he was pretty active in the bedroom for a man his age. 15 tips came in for him, which is a very strange thing to have. All they tell us is they got 15 tips. We don't know how many tips they received in general. Did they receive only 16 tips? Did they receive 1,000 tips? It's just a strange thing to have in. It's things like this that make you think, Jesus, this is a bit weak. No details on the tips, just telling us we got 15 tips on him. So they know he lied about his alibi. They know he has a past history of being violent to women he is in relationships with. They know he plotted an alibi before the bodies were found. And they lay everything out here in the search warrant. They tell us what they were looking for, which is basically everything and anything which can link him to the crime scene and the crime. All electronics of any kind, clothing, guns, knives, all the normal stuff. But then they tell us animal hair samples. So we have to assume that when they talked about unidentified hairs, that could possibly be from an animal. And it's also worth noting that Tony Klein's dog was seized when they raided his home last winter. Why would they take his dog? Could it be something got to do with this? And that's it. That's the warrant. The court has obviously no problem in granting the search warrant. We don't know what they found. I would love to know what they found. And I'm desperate to know, is there a connection to Tony Klein? Does Ron know Tony? Does Tony know Ron? Why did Barbara ask that question? And hopefully, fingers crossed, I got my wish in my last video. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that might be the next thing we find out, because it does feel like a whole timeline is being laid out here for us. It's a difficult case. It's a complicated case. But finally, we have some concrete information. And a lot of stuff here I didn't even talk about will dispel a load of rumours and stop some of the craziness in this case. So that's it. Let me know what you think. Have a read of the document. I will link it down below. Is there anything obvious that I missed? Anything stand out to you from it? Very interested in your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. Good luck. God bless. I hope today is the day.